on. So it's more of a discussion 3, 2, 1, live. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sebastiano Toffaletti from the European Digital SME Alliance. We are live with a conversation on artificial intelligence for small and medium-sized enterprises, for SMEs. I'm today very honored to have a few very good speakers with me, guests, friends. We have Massimo Craglia from the European Commission, the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. We have Segolene Martin, who's CEO of a successful AI startup called Kantify. Segolene is sitting in Brussels. And then we have Toni Luhti from Finland, who is also another successful entrepreneur, CEO himself of Platform for Trust, another very interesting company that we will hear about today. So, we are going to be talking about artificial intelligence, AI, as it is called. We all know that nowadays artificial intelligence is a game changer. It is something that is going to apply to our lives, to all the many other technologies. Some people, some scientists are now comparing the impact of AI to the spread of electricity in the beginning of in the end of the 19th century, where electricity had an enabling effect on existing machineries and processes and so on, which further led innovation. And similarly to that, AI now may be able to transform a great variety of processes in our lives. Of course, we are at the beginning of the spread of artificial intelligence in our economy, in our companies, in our lives. Whereas Europe does have a lot of research, a lot of people that are knowledgeable about AI, especially in the research community, we don't have any big enterprise champion in AI as much as US and China. So Europe seems to be a bit behind other regions in the world. So it is very interesting to understand what our SMEs are doing nowadays in the AI market. I'm very happy to have 3 distinguished speakers who will shortly introduce themselves and will tell us a little bit more about what they know about AI and about SMEs. I would like to start by, this is also very interesting to say that just yesterday, the European Digital SME Alliance, together with the European Commission, launched an AI focus group on SMEs, a group composed of around 40 AI specialists, 40 AI top people from the best companies in Europe that are using AI, the best SMEs in Europe. This is a group that met virtually just yesterday using the video conferencing facilities. And it's a group that will work with us for the next years, and a group of companies which we will monitor to understand how they apply AI, how they use AI, how do they develop further their artificial intelligence. And this is a group which will also try to give some recommendations to us and to the European Commission what should be done to make AI better and easier to be applied in SMEs. Let me now start concretely asking some questions to our very good speakers of today. I will start with the European Commission. We'll start with Massimo Craglia from the JRC, the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. Massimo, what are we talking about here? What is your definition of artificial intelligence? Do we have an official European definition of artificial intelligence, or is it something we need to define? How would you explain that to our audience?
Well, thank you very much, Sebastian. It's a good question. I think that's all the specialists in artificial intelligence might probably agree that there isn't a one single definition. And in fact, I know of at least 3 big international standardization groups that are working hard to come up to define in the standard way artificial intelligence. So there isn't a single definition. By and large, it depends how simple or complex you want to describe. You could explain it as an extension of statistics. You could explain it as the fact that, in fact, it's nothing new. We've had this sort of kind of development of software for the last 50, 60 years. The point is that over the next 6 to 7, there has been such an enormous progress in computing capacity, and more importantly, in the amount of data available, that now these systems are really sort of leaped forward. And therefore, what they can do now is, in essence, are systems of software that can basically observe the environments they're in, learn through the interaction with this environment, and on the basis of this learning, then do some action. By and large, you're talking of things that we are very familiar with every day when we use our smartphones. Artificial intelligence is largely about processing text, so a lot of natural language processing. Is about processing voices. So, your Alexa systems at home will recognize your voice and play something, or recommend something else. That's also artificial intelligence, and recognize images. So a lot of image recognition. So these are the 3 big families. Then you have machine learning, of course, and then you have things like robotics, which are, if you want, a transversal thing. So with these, more or less, you take all the major sort of kind of families of applications and software that are under that umbrella.
Massimo, thank you. Can you also say something about how can we use the artificial intelligence? Do you think we can use it to cope with the COVID crisis? Do you think we can get something out of this technology right now?
Well, as you said, artificial intelligence, it's very broad in its category, and so it has. You were mentioning before the fact that people assimilate it to electricity, in the sense that it's a very transversal, it's called an enabling application, and applies to many areas. So of course you can apply artificial intelligence and machine learning in medicine, in pharmaceutical research, therefore in the search for vaccines or for new drugs, new treatments. The fact that the genome of the virus could be isolated in 5 days compared to months and months of research they would have taken in the past. There's also due to the amount of data, but also the amount of processing and software capacity. So there is that dimension. But of course, there are other dimensions that now are very much in the political discussion, as you all know, which is about how to reopen the economy, which sectors could be allowed to open, how do you trace an individual and follow if there are new clusters. So all of these requires a mix of data from sensors, data from individual, data from applications and mobile phones. All of these then need processing, and processing fast. And so the number of areas in which AI can help are varied.
Yeah, I think it's all about accessing data and being able to process those data, right? Let me now switch to Segolene Martin from company Kantify. Excuse me. You are also a successful entrepreneur who launched your own company in AI. So maybe would you like to introduce your own company, what you do with AI, and what do you think are the opportunities for AI for other companies out there?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. So yes, Kantify, we are a startup specialized in artificial intelligence. So basically, we help other companies understand where to use AI, and we develop AI solutions for them in various fields. And we have a track record in excellence. So we performed award first in the field of predictive medicine last year. And we have developed a solution as well, for example, in the field of cognitive processing of documents. So a solution that with AI can understand unstructured documents as a human would do. So I think we work both for big companies, so we have clients in the biggest company of the world, but also for SMEs. So we have this view of what are the specificities of each. And what I see since the start of the company and our path so far is that indeed there are plenty of opportunities for companies, including SMEs, with AI. And I don't know in the participants who are listening to us today, what is your knowledge of AI and how you have the perception of AI, but there are many use cases of AI, so a field of application of AI that can be implemented quite quickly and deliver value. So our return on investment, for example, quite quickly. And it was also the case in the field of COVID. You can see that in a few weeks, in a few days, sometimes you are able to deploy AI applications that work, that can be improved, but quite fast. And I think that for the SMEs and that are listening to us, it's very important to understand that you can really now, with the progress of AI, get to results quite fast and quite efficiently. I will stop here because otherwise I will speak too much.
No, Segolene, it's very interesting. May I also ask you, I mean, because you speak about using AI in a quite deploying very fast solution, are we talking about big investments here? Do we need a lot of infrastructure? Do we need a lot of software investment? How does it work? I mean, is it something that is accessible to SMEs, or is it a business only for very large companies?
I think the SMEs are compared, in my experience, and what I see are in both challenging but also a very favorable position compared to large companies. Challenging because sometimes SMEs, for example, that are younger can have less data, so need to cope sometimes with a lack of data or understand what is the best data to use depending on what they want to do. So this is something that you need to take into account. But at the same time, SMEs are able to go much faster, and that I can tell you from experience than larger companies,
Yeah.
and take decisions very quickly and be agile and deploy solutions very fast. Another benefit that many SMEs have, perhaps it depends on where you are in Europe, but they can have access to public funding. It means that you can be subsidized for part of your project, and so you can lower the cost and lower the risk in terms of investing in an AI solution. So the risk will be also very dependent on the choice you make in terms of the use case or the application you launch. And for that, you need really to work with experts like us, for example, or others, to understand what is the best way at low cost, at the lowest possible cost, to deploy an application that will gather or generate value. And as soon as you are able to have like a certain level of assessments and certainty, or that you are going into the right direction, then you have a business case, and then it's easier to go. But I think that SMEs really are in a good position to invest in artificial intelligence.
Good message. I think it's obviously, as you said, I think it's all about return on investment, and and I think if you can prove that, and many SMEs will certainly be able and willing to adopt the technology. Let me turn to Toni Luhti from Finland. Toni, you are the CEO of Platform of Trust, another startup, another company that is using AI. So, what is your experience? What are you doing with AI, and what do you think? Why do you think other companies should use AI as well?
Well, that's a really good question, because thinking the AI from the megatrend point of view, as Massimo said, that the computing power has increased a lot during a couple of last years, and most of the companies are seeing that there is a real need for AI, but at the same time they are lacking the data for it, right? Which means that if you have a limited amount of data available for your AI solution, it means that all the results coming out from AI are limited as well. So we are thinking it the other way around, and our mission is actually to provide all the data immediately with the low costs available for any AI solution, which means that, for an example, if you are running an enterprise company and you have 30 different solutions or systems that you're running your business operations, and if you have 30 locations for your data, how much integration costs and harmonization costs for data you're supposed to take, so that the data is available for your AI and you can use it automatically and systematically for your business decisions based on AI, right? So all the time when the AI solutions are getting better and better and there is more use cases, but still the most benefits are coming when you have all the data available, but the business case always fails if you need to spend like 200,000 on technical integrations. It's going to be a costly play if you have a need for AI and the business case is for 15,000 euros, but the costs of integrations are 100,000 euros. So always the business case fails. So these enterprises are actually lacking the solution how they can actually enable the use of AI in a really quick way and also with a low cost way. And that is what Platform of Trust is doing. So we are creating a self-service platform so you can connect any data source to your AI solution in like 2 days, instead of weeks or months taking integration projects. We can connect these data sources with our self-service tools in a couple of days, so you can jump right to the value proposition of AI instead of starting these long and painful IT integration projects.
Right, thank you very much. It's very enlightening. Let me get back to Massimo, perhaps, because both Segolene and Toni are members of this focus group on AI that the European Digital SME Alliance just launched together with the European Commission. You, Massimo, are co-chairing this group of experts. So what is your idea? Why do you think this group is going to be useful? What do you think you and the European institutions can get out of this very specialized people, 40 AI experts from SMEs from all over Europe? What is your expectation? What would you like to get from them? I think you need to also unmute yourself before you give me the answer. But I'm very curious to hear what you have to say.
That might help if I unmute myself. Yes, that's. Thank you very much, Sebastiano, for that question, because I hope it's relevant to the audience of Digital SME. Just let me do one step back. The European Commission and the European Union as a whole, so the member states of the European Union, recognize that artificial intelligence is indeed a big opportunity. It is also a big challenge, and there's a huge global competition, particularly between China and the US, and Europe is trying to find its way. So the member states and the European Commission have basically come up with a plan to work together and to invest substantial amount of money. So we're talking up to 20 billion euros per year for the next 10 years. So that's a significant amount of money to facilitate the uptake of artificial intelligence, its development, but also to prepare society, so prepare the skills, the training, and at the same time also develop a framework that makes sure that this development of AI in Europe basically is there to support and strengthen the agreed European values of democracy, non-discrimination, ethical behavior, and et cetera, et cetera. So that is the basic of this plan. So this plan was adopted at the end of 2018. So let's say just started last year to be deployed. So all the member states have agreed to spend a significant amount of money. And so the European Commission has created a service which is called AI Watch, which we are developing at the Joint Research Center in order to essentially monitor the implementation of this plan. See what happens, see what are the national strategies for artificial intelligence, to what extent they are working in synergy or the overlap or there are gaps, how much investment is actually made by the member states, and then also to see what is the adoption and impact of artificial intelligence in the economy, so in different sectors of the economy, as well as public administration. So that is what AI Watch is doing, and one of the activities that I'm leading is exactly this one, to try to understand the adoption and the impact in different sectors of the economy. So we are starting with health, we'll move on to smart mobility, agriculture, environment, etc., etc. Now, as part of the work that we do to assess this adoption and impact, we are doing many things, as you can imagine. We're looking at patents, we're looking at scientific literature, publications, number of companies, etc., which is very important, and you can do and you can quantify that. But in order to understand really what is the impact and what is, I mean, we talked at the beginning of the fact that artificial intelligence is a label that means many things. So it's important then to talk directly with the companies that are developing and marketing these solutions, as well as to the organizations that are adopting and using these solutions for their businesses. And therefore, the partnership that we have entered with Digital SME is part of this overall methodology that we are deploying in order to understand this impact. So what we have done with you, as you know, is to have an open call to companies to essentially work with us over a period, because this is not something of, it's not a project of 1 year, 6 months, 3 years, or this is something that is going to be a life-changing transition for everybody, for society as a whole, because it affects the way we work, we interact socially, we do everything. And therefore, what we want to do is to have this pool of companies, and we started meeting yesterday for the first time, that we can follow regularly over the next 3, 5, 7 years, 10 years, to see how the company is changing in what they adopt, what they develop, but also through them, how their customers are changing. What impact does it have on their organization of work, on their products, their outcomes, the skills that are needed, and what activity we as Commission, as if you want the regulatory body of the European Union, can help and support this transition. So that's basically why we're working with you. I'm very happy to do so.
Right. Thank you very much, Massimo. So you're really trying, if I can summarize, you're offering intelligence on adoption of AI to the European institutions for whatever initiative they want to do.
The Joint Research Center is the scientific directorate of the Commission. So what we do is to, in fact, get the intelligence from the companies and then trying to pass it on to our policy colleagues in the Commission in Brussels, so that together we can work on this process.
Yes, thank you. Let me also remind the viewers, the people who are following us on the different social media, that they can ask the questions using the comments on by Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, and that we will later in the conversation ask those questions to our speakers. Let me go to Segolene now again, who's CEO of an AI company called Kantify. What do you see? Do you see any barriers when you speak about SMEs in Europe, small and medium-sized enterprises? Do you see barriers, hurdles for the adoption of artificial intelligence by companies in general?
Yes, I think there are several kind of barriers, depending, of course, on the use case and the way the SME can use AI. I think the first one is funding. So indeed, there, as I said before, there are funding available for SMEs, but you need to be able to write how do you say, an application. You need to be able to have like a long-term view, for example, of how you're going to develop an AI project, which is not always easy in the sense that AI can be very iterative AI projects. So sometimes you have like a mismatch between the possibility to ask for funding and the reality of AI projects. So I think this is the first one. The second one, of course, is related to regulation. I think it's very positive that in Europe we are like in the forefront in terms of regulation, in terms of data protection. So we have GDPR, and in other fields, for example, in the field of medical devices. But for a company which has a limited size and limited skills in terms of legal analysis and so on, it can look like a risk or something difficult to understand. Okay, what can I do that respect the regulation and to ensure that I don't burn my feathers while developing my project. So I think these are like two different areas where in the field of this ongoing group, this new group with the JRC, there are perhaps some things to discuss on how to ensure that the SMEs have less barriers while still respecting regulation and what we have to and the values of Europe and so on. But this is what I see in the different projects and initiatives, and we are participating with.
Okay, thank you, Segolene. Let me ask a similar question to Toni. You're also CEO of a successful AI company. What do you see in terms of barriers, but also of potential opportunities for other SMEs to use AI? How do you make the balance between the barriers and the opportunities when you speak to companies who might want to use AI?
Well, again, this is a perfect question, and I'm turning my answer to a business answer because for some reason, the AI, it has a technical echo, the term AI, artificial intelligence, which means that every time when we are talking about AI, the companies who are we talking with are asking their CDOs and CIOs and all these technical persons to get involved on the discussions, which means that easily the discussion will end up to discuss about the technical terms and the performance of AI and everything else. But it's supposed to happen on the business level. So what is the business purpose and what is the business value? Why they're supposed to use AI? So they're supposed to discuss about the benefits and results of using AI instead of technical discussions. And I think that the one key problem on this adoption on the SME level is that most of the SMEs are discussing about AI on the technical level. And when they are selling their solution for the enterprises who can use or take benefit from the AI solution, what they're providing, are happening on the technical level. So not on the business level. And when discussing about the funding and support for such solutions, if we can turn all this AI-related discussion on the business discussion and value discussion instead of technical discussion, we can actually get much more business support for them. And that is definitely one of the key hurdles from my point of view on the business level, what I can see on adoption of AI.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Segolene, would you like to add something?
Yeah, this is something I see as well. This you perfectly described it, Toni. This assimilation of AI, and of course, this is something technical. This is technology behind, but to something that is. For some people, AI can seem like a mysterious and very technical, and this has to be left to IT people. And of course, you need to have IT people in the loop when you set up an AI project. You can't leave them aside. But first, you need to define how can AI help me and how can it help me grow. And this definition of the value is really important. And it can be in terms of like monetary value, but not only. It can be also in terms of value that you bring to customers and the customer experience, for example. And so having this reflection, I think for many companies should be the first stage. And it's a way to ensure that you're going into the right direction, that you focus on the right project, and it goes as smoothly as possible. But it should be business first, or business plus like some IT or data resources in the company. And I fully agree on that point. Indeed, it's a very important one.
Good point. Let me maybe turn to the online audience, because we have got some questions, and maybe I'd like to ask one which I read from the feed in the social media. People are interested to know if we have an opinion about the European Commission white paper on artificial intelligence. Now, we don't have to have read this document in the detail, but what we would like to understand from you is, do you have views in terms of whether it is worth for Europe regulating AI? Because this is what the white paper is about. If we have this objective to make Europe a good place for companies to develop AI, especially for SMEs, Do you have any views in terms of having an approach towards regulating AI versus, letting the market do and develop whatever innovation they want? So how do you strike the balance there between, maintaining the ethical European principles and values and laws, and there having, a dynamic economy that can develop innovation through AI. I don't know if Segolene has a view on that, for instance. Would you like to try to answer this question?
Yeah, sure. I think it's all a matter of balance. So it's I wouldn't like to be a regulator right now because it's really hard to do. But on the one side, on the one hand, you have large companies which are able to have the means to implement regulation, to understand regulation, and to comply with regulation. And on the other side, you have I don't know how many, like 90% of SMEs, and some of which are AI startups, for example, that are like at the forefront of innovation as well, and that have less possibilities to implement regulation. So I think in terms of a new regulation applicable to AI, whatever it is, and whatever it's, even if it's not like directly AI related, but can have like an impact in AI project, you have really to find a smooth balance if you don't want to cut the or how do you say, not avoid, but like if you don't want to stop or the SMEs from innovating. So I think it's very positive that the European Union is like taking like a place and a role in this in the policy making around artificial intelligence, and doing all these efforts in terms of understanding what can be the place of Europe in the overall industry context in the world, compared to the US, compared to China, and all this reflection, for example, in the field of industry and B2B services. So I think it's really like important in terms of strategy to understand where we can be the strongest. So this is the first point. The other point is also, for example, in terms of explainability, all the reflection that is being done around trustworthy AI, and how to ensure that, yeah, we protect as well European companies, consumers, and users through regulation. But indeed, you have to find the right balance in terms of ensuring you do also you don't stop SMEs to move forward, to innovate, to put products on the market, because innovating is something, so you can do some R&D, but if you want your R&D to continue, you need to put your product on the market. And if there is too much uncertainty or too many barriers, of course this can be a problem. So I think this is, if I understand well the direction in which the European Commission is going, is also this balanced approach that is being envisaged. So that's something that should be indeed pursued, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Segolene. Let me go now to Toni Luhti from Platform Trust, another AI successful company. What is your perception, Toni, when we speak about, as Segolene mentioned, strategies to develop AI in Europe? One of the key barriers that is always highlighted, not just for AI, but for all technologies, is the availability of skills, the availability of talented people in Europe that can help our companies to develop and adopt these technologies. So maybe you might have a special view from Finland, from your country, on the talented people. How do you attract these people? Can you find enough of these good people in Europe, in Finland in particular? Do you have any ideas how we could actually get more of these skilled people to help ourselves grow?
Well, that's a that's a long answer what I'm supposed to take here, but I'm having a two direction for this answer. First angle for this answer is education. Are we really educating students enough for the AI solutions in general? You know, when we're asking from the software companies what kind of professionals they are hiring, and some of the professionals who can actually do coding and developing softwares, they are self-educated professionals.
Yeah.
Which means that, you know, would you like to buy an AI solution from a healthcare provider which is developed by the self-educated professionals? So if you would like to go you know, a medical clinic or whatever to get surgery, and the AI-based solution that is going to do the operation for you is developed by the self-educated persons, would you like to get it?
Good question.
Why not? Why not if it's good?
Yeah. So I'm not saying that it cannot be good, but anyway, I think that the education point of view for this topic is really important. You really need to focus on the education part on the country level and the EU level. So you need to have more and more, you know, AI related courses on the different topics in the schools, because AI can impact heavily on any industry and also any kind of, you know, topics that we are studying in schools. But also, when thinking about the competencies and skills and know-how, what the company is supposed to have is that, you know, if you are running an enterprise company with a couple of thousands employees and you have a 150 years history, you are running your existing business with your existing routines and cultures and everything else. Do you really think that you are the best innovative company for your own industry? I think that SMEs who have, you know, short period of time of history, they are moving fast. They can hire these kind of entrepreneurs, and they are, you know, thinking everything from the other point of view, and they don't have this historical background, which is actually holding their backs. Which means that, would you really like to innovate something new for your business based on the history what you have? Would you like to take a completely other angle for your existing business with the SMEs? So instead of doing everything with yourself, would you like to get these SMEs on board and use their skills and their, you know-how to improve and innovate your existing business? And I think it's kind of an old-fashioned way to think that we can do everything by ourselves. You need to get the best persons for the best company and onboard them and use them to innovate your business. And, you know, not hiring everyone for yourself, because there is definitely a lack of competence on the market right now. So don't try to do them all by yourself. Just get the best persons from the best SMEs and use them as a network to innovate your existing business.
Yeah, I suppose you are talking about working as an ecosystem, as a network of, you know, other partners, companies, and so on, and together you can grow. You can find skills to grow, essentially.
Ecosystems definitely, but also get rid of the thinking that you can do everything by yourself.
We are not silos. We are not very, very big companies, especially when we are talking about SMEs. No? So we have to rely on what we have around us. And Massimo, you're from the European Commission, the Joint Research Center, and you're running this AI Watch, which is, you know, a monitoring initiative to understand AI in Europe. Do you have any ideas about this skills gap? About what, you know, our companies, our citizens may need in terms of skills to be successful in artificial intelligence? You will need to unmute yourself again.
You will find that on the AI Watch website, one of the reports that we have published last year is a study that we did on the academic supply and demand of skills in the area of artificial intelligence, high-performance computing, and cybersecurity. It's not been easy because the courses are not terribly well structured, but in essence, we have found about just over 400 different courses in artificial intelligence across Europe. The point is that the majority, about 60%, are postgraduate courses. So there's not only, if you want, a gap in terms of overall supply and demand, but also the fact that, you know, the majority of courses are postgraduate, and probably we also need to introduce AI training, AI education at other levels of education. And from that point of view, the work that Finland has done in providing, the course on elements of AI that is accessible to everyone in every European language is a great first step to help in that direction. So there's still a lot of work to do, a lot of skills that need to be, the gap needs to be filled. And also we have to think about the geographical distribution, because we need to make sure that the skills are developed and retained and utilized across the whole of Europe. And we don't create even further divisions between, areas that basically absorb and suck in all the skills from other parts of Europe, and then other parts of Europe that become sort of kind of complete wastelands as far as advanced skills are concerned. So that is clearly something that we also need to consider.
Okay, Segolene, maybe would you like to also to say something about this skills issue? We heard from Massimo. He mentioned the Finnish course that the government paid for and made available to all Finnish citizens, and then it became available to all European citizens, made available by by Finland to everyone. A course on AI from the basics to some a little bit more advanced level, and this is publicly available. What do you have an opinion about the initiative? Do you think this is the way to go, or do you see other options using universities, companies, and so on, or a mix of everything?
Yeah, I think yes, it's actually formidable to see the possibility for people to acquire this kind of skills now and to self-train the others. So I would have a slightly different opinion than Toni on the capacity now and the possibility for people to on self-train people, because I think you can really now become AI expert or AI engineer. Of course, it takes a lot of effort, etc. But you can have people coming from other sides, other kind of engineer degree, for example, or even statistics, or like people that have had a component in their degree that enabled them to go to AI, and that can be very good. And we have them in our team actually, and we can see they have like very complementary and different angles that enable them to see problems and to be also to be complementary. So I think this possibility now that is open to take courses to train people into AI, even so it can be on the business side or in machine learning, really like in the programming part of artificial intelligence, is very positive. What I see now in the applications I receive, there is something that I have noticed that is very frequent, even with people that have an engineer background. They say that their motivation, for example, if they want to become an intern at Kantify, is to be able to learn, not about AI, but about really to have a practical experience in terms of selecting data, in terms of building models, in terms of testing models, in terms of deploying applications. And I think what is lacking now in the field of traditional education is really this practical aspect, and the ability for future data scientists, future machine learning engineers to have like a practical knowledge of AI solutions, and what is an AI solution, what is the life cycle of an AI solution. And if there would be something to do, it's really at that level, I think, in the traditional education. And then in terms of the non-traditional education, I think that's really good, but what you need to ensure is that you have a certain level of quality. And so for people out there that are listening to us, because I know in terms of confinement that many people are like currently taking AI courses. We've published an article on that because we had so many questions about what should I listen to. So be careful, ensure you choose something that is qualitative, that you can perhaps put on your CV, and that will enable you to have like the right skills. So that's really important. Perhaps last thing I would like to mention, because I'm also the ambassador for Belgium of Women in AI, is that we have clearly a gender issue in Europe in terms of skills, and in terms of not in terms of skills, but rather in terms of gender balance in the machine learning students and staff all over the Europe. And I think if we have like a gap, we need some skills, we need some more people that are taking those courses and that come to the labor market, and that it will go as well through interesting ladies and young ladies and students to become involved in this kind of degrees. So we have more people as well on the market and ready to join companies and to deploy these projects. So that's a really important one.
Thank you, Segolene. Let me go to Toni and ask him, as a CEO of an AI company, a couple of questions we get from the audience, from YouTube. What is the barrier in terms of access to data? How can we solve this bottleneck for companies who want to exploit AI, to use the different data sources, to have a good quality of these data sources? Do we have a solution for this?
Well, again, there is multiple points for that answer, but I think that the most enterprise level companies have realized that they need to get all their internal data to their usage, which means that they are integrating their systems and solutions together. But then I think that the real biggest problem for SMEs is that they are lacking the amount of data and the real quality amount of data, which means that if the SME is supposed to focus on how they're supposed to provide value with an AI, but also how they're supposed to gather all the data from their ecosystem and partners and stakeholders. And if you can solve that one in a quick and cost-effective way, you can actually provide much more higher value. And this is kind of a competitive advantage from the business point of view, what the other SMEs who don't have access to the partner data and ecosystem data so efficient way, they cannot actually solve, which means that if everyone who are looking to get utilization of data, if they would focus first on how to access all the data what they really need, not just the data what they think they need, but also the factors that are indirectly impacting to their factors what they are investigating with AI. If they can get all the indirect data and the direct data available for their AI solution, that would give much more deeper this kind of causal connections, how they can provide value and new insights, how the business are running and what kind of value they can propose. And then the second part is that typically we as a humans, we can ask only the questions what we understand, what we don't know. But what are the questions what we cannot ask, what we don't know that even exist? Typically enterprise companies are asking how much sales we did on last month from the data what they have. They can solve this kind of questions from the invoicing data any point of time. There is no need for AI on that one.
Right.
But what kind of questions they're supposed to answer with the data if they could have all the data available? How much sales we missed because we had too many internal meetings and we were sitting there quiet and browsing our emails or whatever. We wasted our time in a meeting, so we missed this amount of sales. But we don't have all this indirect data also available for this kind of decision making. And so my question here is that what are the questions for AI that we can actually solve, but we just don't know what is the right question?
Yeah, this is a very good point. That leads, in fact, to the next question that I have seen from the audience, and I also had in mind to ask to Segolene, because how can we describe some very clear-cut use cases for SMEs? How can we really explain the value of AI to SMEs? Are we rather talking about industrial AI, or do we want to focus on consumer type of applications? I think Toni developed on the different data we could exploit, but maybe you want to try to really formulate some real and potential use cases for SMEs.
Yeah, you can see the potential benefits. If, of course, I'm going to simplify a bit here in two ways. The first way is using AI to decrease costs. So in terms of value, the value is okay. You increase your profitability because you're able to decrease costs. And here you can think, for example, in terms of robotic process automation, on if you automate part of your processes to reduce labor cost or to assign your staff to more adding value tasks. So it's more in the terms of cost reduction. And I know currently some companies are thinking in that lines in the current crisis context. The second way that is very promising and very real as well is how to use your data to create new kinds of value. And here you have to think more in terms of, okay, what is my data? How can I use it to give me new insights, for example, to develop new services or new products, perhaps that I wouldn't have without this data. And very practically, for example, there are many companies. You need to have enough volume for that, otherwise the business case doesn't make sense. But that they have some products or services and they are losing customers. This is called churn, and this costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of money to acquire a new customer. So when you manage to have a new customer, you want to keep that customer. And with machine learning, with artificial intelligence, what you can do is predict when, why, and at what cost, for which reason, and what does it cost you, a customer is going to leave you. If you wouldn't have AI, you would see a customer leaving you, it would be too late. With the machine learning algorithm, with artificial intelligence algorithm, you're able to predict when this person or company is going to leave you, and then take an action at the right time to ensure that this doesn't happen. And this is a business case that is very, I mentioned it because it's very common to companies to lose customers. Of course, it's something in the life cycle of companies, especially if you have like large volumes. For example, if you are a subscription company or whatever. And that is a very classical way to use AI. It's like a validated business case if you have enough data, of course, enough volume. Otherwise, you don't need help. It doesn't make sense to deploy an AI algorithm. So it's more in the field of marketing and sales, but like many companies are clearly doing marketing and sales. Another way on another source of data is, for example, more a company because there are also perhaps people in the industry environment to, for example, detect mistakes or problems on images. So let's say you produce products, bottles. You have large volumes. You can use an AI algorithm to detect if a bottle has a problem, and so remove the bottle from I don't know a box or your production line before like it leaves your warehouse and this kind of thing. So these are like very also this use case is not like futuristic at all. And this has a benefit. It's not easy. It's not difficult to deploy. You have like algorithms that you can use. You can tune for this kind of use cases, and it's without like a high level of risk. If you have a business case that is you have thought about it, it makes sense. You can have like a success. You can deploy something like that. Either deploy it like into production, so you can run it every day or every week or whatever, depending on what your need, and it's going to work. Yeah.
Thank you, Segolene. Very insightful. We are going towards the end of this conversation. Let me take another question that we got from the audience and turn it to Toni, because we know that the EU is promoting an approach to AI which is human. They say human-centric and trustworthy. We have Massimo Craglia from the Commission here who may say something about this later. So human-centric AI and trustworthy AI. What is your take on this? Is this the way you are doing business? Do you think your approach is like that? Is human-centric and trustworthy? Do you see yourself doing business in a different way from companies outside Europe? What is your concrete way to do that as a European company? Finnish in this case.
Good question again, because I'm thinking that in the next couple of years, when most companies in most business segments and industries are adopting new AI solutions to their daily business use, which means that they are actually, utilizing their AI solution for this business decision making and data-driven innovations and so on. But what happens if they cannot really trust the data what the AI is using? If the data is somehow mixed and there is dots and commas mixed and they are using feet or centimeters in their data formats and whatever, how the AI can solve such an issues where they are just, utilizing the data in the most efficient way and so on, providing the best results. But if the data is bad by its nature, so whenever it's coming from the data source, humans are actually, adding data to the CRM systems and whatever, they are making typos, and different CRM providers are having a different data models, and the data cannot be compared, or it cannot be, it's not by nature the computer in a computer readable format, which means that people must do some kind of a data format related actions towards the data so it can be used in an efficient way with an AI solution. But it still doesn't mean that the data cannot be bad. So if the smart sensor in a smart city or whatever is broken and it's sending corrupted data, or there is some kind of weird circumstances in a place where the sensor is gathering the data or whatever, the AI don't know how trusted the data is, which means that all the results from the AI is not trusted either. So would you like to do a decisions, worth of a couple of millions euros on your business level with the data that you can really trust on? Probably not. So the next level, the first level on utilizing AI is to get the competence of AI, right? So you need to understand how you're supposed to use the AI. Then the second part is actually, gather all the data. But then the third part, before doing this kind of large business critical decisions based on AI, you need to be able to trust the data what you are using. If you're gonna trust the data, who is taking the responsibility of the results? And that is definitely coming next on the market, but companies are not there yet. But this is going to be a huge business from my point of view.
Okay, thank you, Toni, for trying to address this difficult question. We are now going towards the end, so I would like to turn to Massimo Craglia from the European Commission, the Joint Research Center. Massimo, because you are also co-chairing the AI focus group on SMEs of the European Digital SME Alliance, and you are in charge of the AI monitor, AI watch of the European Commission, and so on. So you are a leading person in terms of in the European Commission for AI. What are your takeaways from this conversation, which is part of a larger conversations which we are having with many SMEs in AI? What would you take home? What would you reflect more upon from the European Commission on this discussion, which is taking place with SMEs on artificial intelligence?
Well, I think that just from thank you for this opportunity. I think that even just from the discussion we have had today, even just in this hour, I think that there were like three main areas that I took out of this discussion. One is the question of access to resources, and that clearly is about financing, and it's not just about the quantity of money; it's how to access that money. And how to be able to grow. And it's not just money, it's also data, because at the end, without data, you don't go anywhere with artificial intelligence. And I think that is very important. That's a very important resource. Now, let me link now that data discussion with the discussion we had about education, because skills, it's another fundamental resource. But I think that we should also think about moving away from just the model where the educational systems pumps out people who have expertise and companies are on the demand side. I think that what Segolene make a really excellent point about the fact that in a way, the SMEs should be part of that framing of education and learning. And Toni was alluding on the fact that companies need data that is not just their own data, but also data of the ecosystem of other organizations. And I think that if we start from that, we need to think of augmenting the traditional and formal education with also sort of kind of greater degree of partnerships across the whole of Europe between public authorities that often have a lot of data that is often available, not necessarily super accessible, but it can be helped by companies to make it more accessible. The SMEs in these areas and the educational system, so that they can work together and actually try to solve local problems with local data and do the training at the same time and nurture the SMEs in doing so. And I think that creating that virtual sort of kind of local data ecosystem would be enormously helpful for all concerned. And last but not least, in respect to the regulations, I mean, I see there's a lot of questions that I've alluded to that. I think that the view we are taking in Europe is that some degree of regulation is a benefit for European society. In the same way, like we do not want to have toys for children that are not certified to be safe because maybe they're being painted with some lead-based paint. Or that have small pieces that then children swallow. The same reason we do not want to have AI algorithm and solutions that maybe have been trained on data that may not be bad necessarily, but it's just not appropriate for our own education, for our own lifestyles and diet and habits. And we don't know what is it trained on. So we need to have that degree of consumer protection or protection of European citizens. And that, I agree, can create a greater difficulty for companies if the guidelines and the regulations are not easy enough to understand. But it can also create an opportunity compared to the rest of the world to use that innovation potential within this regulatory framework to come up with innovative solutions. And the best example that I can think of is recently the GDPR, that everybody said, oh, you're crazy in Europe to adopt that. The other parts of the world are going so much faster, you'll be completely dead. Okay, well, we went ahead, we did it. I'm sure it's not perfect, but at the same time, now many parts of the world are copying it. California has adopted a GDPR that is even more stringent than the European. San Francisco has adopted one. So, you can see that even when they were doing the audition to Zuckerberg at the Senate, they were asking, well, don't you think, if you remember at the time of all the scandals about the loss of data from Facebook, that some degree of regulation is actually a good idea. So that creates an opportunity for European companies. So I think that all this discussion about regulation, we need balance, we need support, but it can create opportunities. And above all, it just can foster the European value and European companies.
Okay. Thank you very much, Massimo Craglia from the European Commission. Thank you, Segolene Martin, and thank you, Toni Luhti. Thank you to all the viewers. And with this, we conclude, and we look forward to see you two in the next online conversation of the European Digital SME Alliance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Have a great day, guys.